Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another historical human's heritage. As if Chichen Itza and the First Congregation Church weren't enough for us, we're back again today with another UNESCO monument. This time we're talking Stonehenge, because honestly, I don't think Chichen Itza was basic enough, so we gotta go way back to the start.
Well, actually, um, there was just too much carving on all that rock. We have to go back to the original Man Moves Rock Monument, and that is none other than the Stonehenge.
Which is ironic because one of the reasons you can't actually walk up to the monument is because too many people were carving it. People would literally
Yeah,
go up to Stonehenge and go, "I'd have a piece of that."
yeah. Reminds me of that whole video we did on Plymouth Rock and
Plymouth the
why
Rock
it's so
Johnson.
small. We do not. All right, that's going on the merchandise list now.
Plymouth the Rock Johnson.
We're
I love
record
it.
we're recording all of this. So
but
good luck. Good luck living that down. But
but one of the interesting things about Stonehenge is it's a Neolithic or New Stone Age monument, and it is absolutely ancient. About 3,700 to 1,600 BC, which in modern days about 5,700 years ago to 4,600. Wait, 3,600. Yeah, it's hard doing the math, but it's old. It's old,
add
old.
to add 2K on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
It's 3,600 years old at the youngest.
yeah. And it's located in southern England in Britain, and it's where a lot of Neolithic and Bronze Age ceremonial and funerary monuments are located. The Stonehenge is just the most prominent, long lasting. There were a series of wood henges around there, along with all other. There's a lot of other burial mounds located within the region. Um, Obviously listed here. There's Woodhenge, the Curses, Durrington Walls. Um,
Basically, if you were to take a spade to anything within sight of the Stonehenge, there is more Neolithic artifacts than dirt.
yeah,
And
there's a
that is
lot.
impressive. That is truly impressive. So this is a major his. This is obviously a major heritage site and monument for its massive size and just sheer scale of time in which it has existed.
That, and I think you're just straight up missing the two most important pieces of this was megalithic architecture. They had to quarry the stone, transport the stone, and then somehow figure out a way to lift the stone. And when they lifted the stone, they turned another piece of stone on its side and lifted that up. Like the scale and sheer ingenuity that it must have taken to construct this is honestly one of the reasons why you see a lot of conspiracy theories pushed a lot in the field, because people think about that, and instead of trying to figure out the true mechanics behind it, they like to they like to default and say, "Oh, it must have been aliens who built it because clearly these people couldn't have done it themselves."
Or even just the basic logic of, you know, my sedentary lifestyle with my two hands can't do this by myself. Therefore, this entire culture of, people could not have possibly managed it. There's some really confusing logic to these people. But anyway, the Stonehenge has some wonderful protections on it, I believe. Uh, as the UK government has, I believe, two laws protecting it: the Planning Act of 1990 and the 1979 Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act. Um, both of which provide protections for such sites as the Stonehenge, which, as I believe you mentioned earlier, Justin, people are not allowed to approach even when they visit for tourism.
Which, have you ever been to the site?
Yes, I have. I went there on my way to the cliffs of Dover.
Oh, interesting. Opposite ends of the country, but interesting.
Well,
Um,
it was a big, sort of,
yeah,
multi-day tour
loop.
type thing.
Uh, Should also preface we're American, so England is the size of the state of Florida. You can go from one end to the other in a couple hours. Um, but like,
I feel like that's hurtful to Florida.
it's Florida. They're too busy dealing with gators and other things that are demonetizable. Um,
Yeah.
but no, it's interesting because you're right. You walk up to the site and you are probably a good 50 to 100 feet away, maybe 25 meters. Like it's a sizable distance. You could see the scale and size of the monuments, but you're not allowed to get close.
Yeah.
And that is because people were chipping away parts of the stone and were damaging it. But there's a nice visitor center. And then, maybe a quarter mile away, you've got the motorway.
Yeah. Yeah, the motorway that exists for almost the sole purpose of shipping buses to Stonehenge.
And also bisects the entire area of the site.
It
There had
was
to
not
be
a
extensive mitigation that took place.
yeah, it was a nightmare and a half when they put that in, and it still wasn't a good idea. But one of the nice things about Stonehenge is that Stonehenge and Avebury, which is where it is located, they're owned by conservation bodies. So these are charitable organizations dedicated to conserving and preserving what is there, which I do believe we have a reacts on the Newark the Newark mounds. One of the big controversies around those mounds in Ohio is the fact that the land they're on is technically owned and run by a private company rather than any sort of conservation or government entity, which is what is running Stonehenge.
And the interesting thing about that, very briefly to touch on, that I find very interesting is the ownership history of Stonehenge. Um, in that it originally was privately owned, and there was a gentleman who purchased the plot of land and then just kind of had the idea of like, I don't really know what to do with these stones, so I guess I'll sell it to the government. Like, I guess we'll make a protection of it. And
Mhm.
that's literally the story of how we got Stonehenge protected. And one of the things that I alluded to in the original, or one of the original heritage videos, was a site that was completely deconstructed and then reconstructed, which, for those of you who are unaware, the Stonehenge that we see today is not the Stonehenge that used to be there. Because these stones were just stuck in the ground and didn't have that much of a foundation and like were buried a certain depth below. A lot of them fell over and hit the ground, and a lot of the top ring fell over. So at the turn of the 19th century, they brought in a crane and reset a bunch of the stones into the position that they believe it should be in.
Yeah. And I do have with me from my time at Stonehenge a little recreation of what that would look like in full were they to get all the stones arranged. I know it's very bright, but like you can see, we've got the little stones there and the full henge around it uh, of monolithic stones. Lovely, lovely little stuff.
So it's
I
it's
like
quite
having visual
interesting.
aids. I like having these little visual aids, just random things around around the recording booth.
So I have one. I have a little pewter one, but I put it in a box in my closet to keep it out of sight for a while I'm in transit. But obviously, like the criteria for why this is a World Heritage Site is pretty easily explained. It's a Neolithic, megalithic structure, which Neolithic, new stone, megalithic, big stone. It's a new stone, big stone project.
Yep, yep. Run by Fred Flintstone, because we might as well. Or
but there's
disclaimer, not actually run by Fred Flintstone.
but like there's a lot of cultural stuff associated with it, and Neolithic era, it's very hard to find such densely populated artifacts. I mean, the only other place that I can think of off the top of my head is Newgrange in Ireland,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
slightly older and slightly larger than Stonehenge,
yeah. That
because the
that
Irish might have done it better.
yeah. That's there's a yeah Neolithic and even just lithic sites in general are painfully hard to find, and to have one that is as clearly Keystone as Stonehenge is something that definitely needs to be kept on the earth. And
Yes.
fortunately, everyone seems to agree on that, given its current ownership and protected statuses.
And the fact that it was privately owned and the guy decided to make sure it was open to the public. So,
Yeah.
thank you. Having a little
Thank
more
you.
foresight than some other property developers.
Thank you, random British man.
But yeah, anyways, I think that could be a good point for us to wrap up today's video. Any other insights or thoughts you have as we part ways here?
Like and subscribe for Tiny Stonehenge. Like and subscribe. I have a tiny Stonehenge. You should do this.
And on that terrible bombshell, we'll see you guys next week.